things in this world that we will never fully understand.
And one of those things was the house that I grew up in. It's Halloween time. It's a time for ghost stories. It's a time for all things spoopy. And I'd like to tell you guys a story about a very spoopy house that I grew up in. When I was 11, I ended up switching schools and I had to move into a house in district. We looked at a couple of houses and we found two in the neighborhood that we really liked, one a little bit more than the other. So we tried to go for that house and it didn't really work out. Something fell through during closing. So we ended up with this second choice house. And this is going to sound like a first world problem. This house was really cool because it actually had a pool inside the house. And now that sounds like super rich and expensive and whatever, but trust me, it wasn't really well done. We actually had black mold in the house. In the future, we actually did end up building a room over the pool and closing the pool off completely, just because it was so bad. When we were looking at the different houses, we had a friend who was like into numerology, and she told us not to move into the house because the numbers 5, 1, 7 equaled up to 13. And said that we were going to have family problems and financial problems if we moved into that house. Guess what happened? We also had paranormal problems, but she didn't predict that. She didn't really predict that, but during the closing of the house, the family members of the previous owner who was recently deceased, he didn't really have a good relationship with his children. He actually, you would think, hey, this guy's really cool. He built a pool in his house because it was an addition off the back of the house. No, he built it after all of his kids moved out. So he was a little bit weird. And my parents were just very confused by the whole situation. We moved into the house, and almost immediately, everybody kind of is getting this bad feeling from the house. We ended up having experiences like almost right away. Our neighbors, they came over and started asking us kind of like weird questions about the house, like, what's it like in there? Like, how's it going? Like, they were just like really suspicious about it, and we just we didn't know why. They ended up telling us that the died under mysterious circumstances in the house. She had a heart attack in the pool, and he did nothing to try and save her, something like that. It was a lot of rumors, and we didn't really know what to think about it. We kind of pushed those aside because, hey, we found a house, we moved, we're all settled in, we know we're going to be here for a while, so we want to have a good house. My parents start trying to fix up the house because it really hadn't been updated since the 70s. We're trying to update this house, and it basically is a money pit. Things just never go right. My mom and dad are really handy, and they're good with home remodeling stuff, and just everything that we touched just turned to shit. It was just terrible. The plumbing was terrible in the house. The electricity was really bad in the house. The former owner, because of his Parkinson's disease, he had a driveway. This is in Chicago, so he had a driveway that was actually heated, so it would melt the snow, so he wouldn't have to plow the snow. It was very weird because when we first moved in, we had these insanely high electricity bills, and we were like, why? And it turns out that that driveway was on. Even though no one had turned it on, it was just on, and it was the middle of the summer at this point. And so my dad ends up trying to shut it off. The next month, the electricity bill is still high. He's like, okay. So he ends up cutting the lines so this heated driveway doesn't work at all. And the electricity bills are just really randomly spiking all the time. It really doesn't, we can have all the lights off in the house and there's just constant weird electricity bills. That could be it could be because it was an older house. I mean, it was built in the very late 50s. So the house is 39 years old at this point. That's not incredibly old. The house I live in now is 33 years old, so, whatever. But it was built in the other house was built in the 50s, so we end up having a lot of really bizarre experiences in the house. Namely, we have issues with feeling very unsafe in our own house, like people are watching us. Everyone always felt like they were being chased up the up the stairs from the basement. There were certain rooms in the house that were just really intense, whereas there were other rooms that were really chill. We started smelling cigarette smoke. None of us smoke, and the previous owner did. So every so often we would smell cigarette smoke. And not like leftover cigarette smoke from when he used to live there. Like, it smelled like somebody was blowing cigarette smoke, like, in your face. And it was just like, what is this? Where's the smoking coming from? Like, you know, I'm sure my parents probably thought, like, hey, are the kids smoking? We were. We're constantly sick in this house. We're constantly angry in this house. And this is not like us. Like, if you know my family, we're all pretty happy-go-lucky, fun, goofy people. And we're just, like, all, like, super angry in this house. And we cannot figure out why. Like, we think, like, you know, it's just the stress of moving. You know, we're saying all these different things. Then stuff started getting really intense. We were sitting on the couch. This was after we had closed up the pool. So this was like a couple of years in. We're sitting on the couch, and I would say about 50 feet away from where everyone is standing, not 50 feet, maybe like 20 feet, from where everybody's sitting around watching TV, a frickin' candle holder, I'll use this marker as an example, a candle holder is sitting on this half wall that we had in the pool room, and all of a sudden it just goes, and just we hear it just hit the back window and just start rolling onto the floor. There was no one near it. It's like a candle holder. It was like this big. It was like this little metal framed candle holder, and there was no candle in it, but it was like somebody had picked it up and thrown it against our back window, which was a good 20 feet away. So we're like, okay, this house is haunted. Clearly this house is haunted. Oh, and then that was the other thing that was happening too, is my mom absolutely loves gardening. Like, you should see her house now. It's beautiful. She does awesome gardening. That's like her thing. She loves doing it. She's got a green thumb. Our house that we lived in before this one, we had the most beautiful garden ever. We could not get anything to grow in this yard. We called it Satan's soil because, I mean, nothing would grow in this yard. It was just terrible. And so, all these things just kept happening. And, at this point, we've basically accepted, this house is haunted. Everyone who comes over at our house is like, this house is really weird. Like, my cousin came over, said she couldn't sleep because she just felt like paranormal activity or whatever. And, like, we wouldn't tell people about this. Like, we weren't like, hey, come over to our house, it's haunted. We were just kind of, like, staying quiet about it because we didn't want people to think we were crazy. At this point, I think I'm, like, in high school. My brother is dating this girl. And her mom comes over, just because to meet our family. Like, we were good friends with her family too. And her mom is apparently a medium. And the instant she walked into her house, she was just like, whoa. She's like, whoa, you guys, do you guys like ever notice any paranormal activity in this house? And we were like, yeah. And she's just like, it is heavy in here. So, think what you want about mediums or whatever, but this woman proceeded to tell us stuff about the house that there is no way she could have known. This is stuff we heard from our neighbors. This is stuff we heard at the closing. This is stuff, this is not public knowledge. She comes over and she's telling us the name of the former owner, whose name was Artie, telling us about his wife and about how she was in the pool, telling us how he thought that we moved into the house to help fix it up, and now that the house was fixed up, he wanted us gone. He wanted us out of here. He's like, what are you doing in my house? And apparently this guy is like pacing back and forth while she's talking to him, and she's just like, dude, stop, like yelling at him because he's just like, his energy is just so insane. And we're like, she's like literally telling us stuff that there's no way she could have known. We're talking like first names. We're talking stuff, like she knew about stuff that was in the house so like when we moved into the house, there was some of his stuff left over. And for some reason, we just kept it in the crawl space. Like, no reason. We were just lazy and we didn't move it. And it was like things like books and clothes, and there was like a baby crib and like all this weird stuff. And we just left it alone because it was like out of sight, out of mind, like deep in the crawl space. And no one really wanted to go in there anyway. So she's like telling us, he's admitting responsibility for all the things that are going on. She told us things that had happened that there's no way she could have known about. And that basically he just thought this was his house and he wanted us out. So that was a lot to take in, obviously. We end up asking her, we're like, what do we do? And she's just like, all right, first thing you need to do is you need to get rid of all of his stuff. So all of his stuff that's in the basement, he's like attached to. he does, as soon as you get rid of that stuff, you're going to start seeing improvement. So she ends up telling us to take all the stuff from the basement, put it in a box, and write Artie's moving day on the box. So he knows he's moving out of the house. So we do that. We take all his books, we take the crib, we take all the clothes and miscellaneous items that are in there. We put them in a couple of boxes. We write Artie's moving day on the side of them. We put them out by the curb. So we sat there and we watched as all of this stuff gets lifted up into the truck. Well, here's the problem though. Garbage truck breaks. I am not kidding you. The garbage truck freaking broke the instant that Artie's stuff touched the inside of it. They had to call another truck to go finish the garbage route because this garbage truck broke down in front of our house. There was nothing in there that could have broken the truck. It was just his stuff. It was the energy that was attached to his stuff just completely disabled this poor garbage truck. It had to be towed. They couldn't even drive away from our house. And so, his stuff was gone, but the activity definitely kept persisting. He must have just stayed anyway. At this point, we're just kind of used to it. We kind of deal with it. We've accepted, hey, this is just our life now. So, I have friends come over, and I know that there's some people who watch this YouTube channel who have been in that house, and they have all felt the same thing. I won't tell people this. They have all felt the same thing. So, when I'm 21, I move out. I move over to Arizona for a while. And my parents are trying to sell the house too. And that's the other thing too, is that every time we try to sell the house, something bad happens, and we're not able to sell the house. Like, I could go on a whole rampage about that. But it was like before he wanted us out, and now he didn't want us to leave. So we're just like, all right, whatever. So my parents, they decide they're going to move to Arizona for a while too. They go to move out of the house. They go to back out of the driveway to make the trip to Arizona. Their freaking Lincoln Navigator shuts down. Just completely breaks. They can't drive. They have to put the move off by a day to fix the damn car. So it's like, what the hell? It took us a while to sell the house, but we did end up selling it. Took a loss on it because this was during the housing bubble, of course. My aunt and uncle actually used to live next door to that house too, so we lived next door to each other. And so my aunt and uncle lived in the house next door for a while. And when the new people moved in, they were this young, vibrant couple that were, getting ready to change everything in the house and whatever. And she didn't see them for a little while. My aunt didn't see them for a while, and she saw her come out of the wife come out of the house, and she just looked terrible. She just looked like she had been through hell. That could be anything, obviously, but man, that house, that's not a good place. I live in Chicago again, and I won't drive by that house. It's just too many bad memories, too scary. Thankfully, my aunt and uncle don't live there anymore, so I have no reason to go down that street anymore. So yeah, that's my pretty scary ghost story. And everything I told you is not embellished. It is 100% as it happened. You can believe it. You cannot believe it. But that is what I lived through for, 10 years? 11 to 21 or whatever. I lived that. And it was it was pretty spooky. For me, at least, yeah, I really think it was haunted. I lived it, I experienced it. I believe that house was haunted. That's my haunted house story. So these are my ghost adventures. I really hope you enjoyed that story. And if you want to hear more stories like that, give me a like, subscribe, and comment, and let me know what you think. Have you ever lived in a haunted house? Do you believe in ghosts? Have you ever had an experience like that makes you think hey, maybe there's something beyond this physical world? Yeah, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear all your ghost stories. I love ghost stories. I hope you're having a great day, and if not, I hope this made it a little bit better. I'm Coloring Book Dog, and this is my ghost story.
I can see